Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, sir, and all of my friends. I'm from Group 4, and we will present about the tax assessment. In this slide, we will present about tax bills, tax underpayment assessment letter, additional tax underpayment assessment letter, overpayment tax assessment letter, zero tax assessment letter, and the last one, calculate the sanction and the amount of tax that must be paid in the tax assessment letter. Right. The first subchapter will be explained by me. The first one is tax bills. The definition of tax bills according to Law Number 28 of 2007, tax bills or a tax collection letter or STP atau surat tagihan pajak is a letter to collect tax or administrative sanction in the form of interest or fines. Legally, a tax collection letter has the same position as a tax assessment letter. The next one is the function of tax bills. The functions of the issuance of the STP or surat tagihan pajak are as follows. The first one, there is a correction on the amount of tax payable based on the taxpayer's SPT. The second one means for imposing sanction related to taxpayers' tax activities. The last one is means to collect tax out. Right. The next one is the issuance terms of tax collection letter. STP or tax collection letter issued by and through the Tax Service Office or KPP, where the taxpayer is registered. The reason for the issuance of the STP is because the taxpayer doesn't fulfill some or all of his tax obligation, which include payment and tax reporting. In full, the reason and condition for issuance of the STP are discussed in Article 14, Paragraph 1 of Law Number 28 of 2007 that we can read in this slide. The next one is the sanction for issuance of a tax collection letter or SPT atau surat tagihan pajak. As discussed earlier, STP is a tax collection letter or administrative sanction in the form of fines or interest. In full, the administrative sanction or fines for the issuance of the STP are as follow. The first one, the lateness of the annual corporate income tax return is subject to a fine of 1 million rupiah. The second one, late annual income tax return for individuals 100,000 rupiah. The third one, late VAT return are subject to a fine of 500,000 rupiah. Another period of late tax return is subject to a fine 100,000 rupiah. In addition to fine, there are also interest penalty with the following condition, and you can read on this slide. All right. The next one is payment of fines or sanction. Payment of fines or sanction on STP or surat tagihan pajak can be done through banks or certain third parties who receive tax payment through tax deposit letters or SSP. In this case, the taxpayer is required to include the STP number in the SSP in the stipulation number column. If the taxpayer forget to include the STP number, it will be considered as not paying or the STP status is still as before. If the problem already occurs, the taxpayer must resolve it through a book entry process or pemindah bukuan that will take a lot of time. Right. The next one is tax underpayment letter. Tax underpayment letter itself is the tax payable for a tax period turns out to be greater than the amount of the tax credit after an inspection. The tax underpayment must be paid off before the SPT is submitted. For example, like in this slide, income tax payable by PT Cinta Kita Abadi is 90 million, and the tax credit, the first one is withholding tax from work, which is it's according to Article 21, around 5 million. The second one is tax collection by other parties, according to Article 22, around 10 million. The third one is withholding tax from capital, according to Article 23, around 5 million. The fourth one is tax credit from capital, according to Article 24, around 15 million. The fifth one is paid by wajib pajak, according to Article 25, around 10 million. So we need to calculate this amount. So the hasilnya adalah 45 million. So that's the amount of income tax that can be credited. And then the income tax accrue is 35 because 18 million minus by 45 million. Then the tax underpayment of 35 million must be paid before the SPT PPH is submit. Right. That's all from me. I'll give to Bianca Lina. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you to Agus Leo for explaining about tax bills and tax underpayment assessment letter. Now I'll continue about additional tax underpayment assessment letter. So it can be said as a tax assessment letter that determines the addition to the amount of tax that has been determined. So in Indonesia, you can say it's SKPKBT. So the Director General of Taxes might issue SKPKBT within 5 years after the time the tax becomes due or the end of the tax period, part of the fiscal year or fiscal year, if new data is found which result in an increase in the amount of tax payable after an audit is carried out in the context of issuing the SKPKBT. Jadi SKPKBT Publication juga punya legal basis, dia di Article 15 UU KUP. Kalau untuk publication-nya consists in paragraph 2 and paragraph 3. So paragraph 2 is said about the amount of tax underpayment payable in the additional underpaid tax assessment is added with administrative sanction in the form of an increase of 100% of the total tax deficiency. Jadi sanksi administratif dari SKPKBT adalah 100% dari total berapa yang tax deficiency, total tax deficiency. Jadi misalnya total tax deficiency kita setelah data baru habis diaudit itu kan jadi totalnya 2 juta, maka 2 juta dari 100%. Jadi total yang harus kita bayar adalah 4 juta. Sementara di paragraph 3, it says about the increase as referred to in paragraph 2 shall not be imposed if the additional underpaid tax assessment is issued based on a written statement from the taxpayer of his own free will, provided that the Director General of Taxes has not started conducting audits in the context of issuing the additional underpaid tax assessment. Jadi bisa aja kita nggak dapat sanksi 100%, karena kita telah melapor kalau misalnya ada perubahan data, tapi itu sebelum diaudit oleh pihak pajak. Jadi SKPKBT kan tadi punya jangka waktu 5 tahun, so SKPKBT have expired. So the legal basis in Article 15 UKUP in paragraph 1 and paragraph 4. Paragraph 1, as I said before, the period of 5 years after the time the tax is due or the end of the tax period. And in paragraph 4, it said that the period of 5 years as referred to in paragraph 1 has elapsed, an additional underpaid tax assessment letter can still be issued, plus an administrative sanction in the form of interest of 48% of the total unpaid or unpaid tax. In the event that the taxpayer, after a period of 5 years, is sentenced for committing a crime in the field of taxation or other criminal acts that may cause losses to state income based on a court decision that has permanent legal force. Jadi kalau misalnya udah expire, SKPKBT-nya udah nggak 5 tahun lagi, bukan berarti kita nggak kena sanksi lagi, tapi kita mulai dapat sanksi, ditambah lagi 48% dan juga dihitung sebagai tindakan kriminal. Jadi ini contoh SKPKBT example. Misalnya, amount of tax established is 6 million rupiah, but after a new entry, after audit, there should 10 million rupiah. So we should pay. So kekurangannya adalah additionalnya 4 million because of administrative sanction 4 million. So we added additional total tax with amount of administrative tax sanction. So the total of additional amount of tax still must pay is 8 million rupiah. So next we have overpayment tax assessment letter. Jadi pengertiannya berdasarkan pada artikel 1.19 UU KUP. So it can be said that a tax assessment letter that determines the amount of tax overpayment because the amount of the tax is greater than the tax payable or should not be payable. Jadi kayak seharusnya kita bayarnya tuh 4 juta tapi kita bayar 6 juta. Jadi kan kita berlebihan bayarnya. So SKPLB have legal basis. They are in Article 17 UKUP, mainly in paragraph 1, paragraph 2, and paragraph 3. So in paragraph 1, the Director General of Taxes, after conducting the audit, issues an assessment of overpaid tax if the amount of tax credit or the amount of tax paid is greater than the amount of tax payable. So in paragraph 2, it said that based on the request of the taxpayer, the Director General of Taxes, after examining the correctness of the tax payment, issues an assessment of overpaid tax if there is a tax payment that should not be payable, the provisions of which are regulated by or based on a regulation of the Minister of Finance. In paragraph 3, it said that an overpaid tax assessment letter can still be issued again if based on the result of the examination and or new data, it turns out that the overpaid tax is greater than determined tax overpayment. Jadi setelah misalnya kita udah dapat SKPLB, terus nanti ada data baru lagi, kita masih bisa issue again about SKPLB. So this is SKPLB example. Tax substance is 5 million rupiah, but our total tax credit is 19 million rupiah. So total excess tax payment is 4 million rupiah. So that's all what can I share to you guys. I'll give it to Ara.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I will continue to explain the next topic. So this topic is about zero tax assessment letter. Zero tax assessment letter is a tax assessment letter that determines the amount of the tax principal is equal to the amount of tax credit or the tax is not payable, and there is no tax credit. Based on Law Number 28 of 2007, a zero tax assessment letter can be issued after the DJP has examined the SPT and finds that the amount of tax credit or the amount of tax paid is equal to the amount of tax owed, or the tax is not payable and there is no tax payment. And zero tax assessment letter is a letter issued by Director General of Taxes to taxpayers who pay taxes according to the amount owed, or to taxpayers who do not have tax payable. This letter is issued for certain tax needs, in contrast to a letter for underpayment or overpayment of taxes. This letter is issued if you pay the tax due according to the amount or when you have no tax due. Provision regarding the zero tax assessment regulated in Article 17A, the elaboration of the contents of Article 17A of the Ministry of Finance document is: first, the Director General of Taxes, after conducting the audit, issues a zero tax assessment if the amount of tax credit or the amount of tax paid is equal to the amount of tax payable, or the tax is not payable and there is no tax credit or there is no tax payment. Second, the procedure for the issuance of a zero tax assessment is regulated by or based on a regulation of the Minister of Finance. Next, according to this provision, a zero tax assessment is issued for first, income tax atau PPh. So if the amount of the tax credit is equal to the tax payable or the unpaid tax, and there is no tax credit. Second is value-added tax. If the amount of tax credit is equal to the amount of tax payable, or the tax is not payable and there is no tax credit, and if there is tax collected by the value-added tax collector, the amount of tax payable is calculated by means of the output tax minus the tax collected by the value-added tax collector. And the third one is sales tax on luxury goods atau PPNBM. So PPNBM happen if the amount of tax paid is equal to the amount of tax payable or tax is not payable and there is no tax payment. Some example for this case is, suppose PT Bright submits the 2020 corporate income tax return on April 30, 2021, which states allowed with the following details, like loss with the amount of 15 million and income tax payable 0 amount, tax credit 0 amount, and so the total of tax underpayment is 0 amount. If based on the results of the examination, it turns out that the net loss should have been 20 million rupiah, so that the income tax payable is 0. The DJP issues a SKPN, such tax principal amount, the amount is 0, tax credit amount, the amount is 0, and the total of 0 tax, of course, is 0. So it's all from me. The next material will be explained by Lady.
My name is Lady Vidya, and I'm going to talk about tax assessment letter, or SKP for short. There are 4 kinds of SKP. The first one is Surat Ketetapan Pajak Kurang Bayar, or SKP KB. The second one is Surat Ketetapan Pajak Kurang Bayar Tambahan, or SKP KPT. The third one is Surat Ketetapan Pajak Lebih Bayar, or SKP LB, and the last one is Surat Ketetapan Pajak Nihil, or SKPN. The first one is SKPKP, or Surat Ketetapan Pajak Kurang Bayar. So, underpaid tax assessment letter is a tax assessment letter that determines the amount of tax principal, the amount of tax credit, the amount of the underpayment of the tax principal, and the amount of administrative sanctions, and the amount of tax that still need to be paid. This is the example of this. As you can see, there are toll tax credit, number of the tax lesser payments, the administrative sections, and the amount of the tax that still need to be paid, or the tax payable, about 6. million that we get from the number of the tax lesson payment for million, and the administrative sections for 2 million we added and equals 6 million. The next one is the publication of SKPKB. So the amount of the tax underpayment is the underpaid tax assessment as referred to in paragraph 1, letter of, and the tax is added with the administrative section in the form from interest 2% per month, and for the maximum time is 24 months. Based on Article 13 from UKUB. So there are two kinds. The first one is if based on the result of the determination of the tax payable is not paid or underpaid. Let's just jump to the example. So here in the example, the PT XYZ is corporate taxpayer who conducts electronic goods trading business activities submits 2008 corporate income tax return, and you can see the net income, PPh payable, tax credit, underpaid tax, and the shortfall of the pay of the income tax that need to be paid on April 29, 2009. So based on the result of the examination, it turns out that the net income should be 1,100,000,000 rupiah. So the income tax payable should be 312,500,000. Yeah. So the DJP published the SKPKB at October 10, 2009, and the result is this. The tax principle is this. The tax credit amount, the amount of tax shortage, administrative station for 10 months, and the amount of tax that still need to be paid is 36 million. The second one is the notification letter isn't submitted with the period. So if the notification letter is not submitted with the period that referred to Article 3, Paragraph 3, and after being reprimanded in writing is not delivered on time as specified in the warning letter, the amount of tax in the tax underpayment assessment as referred to paragraph 1, letter B, letter C, and letter D is added to with administrative section in the form of increase of this. There are three. The first one is 50% of income tax that is not paid or underpaid in one fiscal year. The second one is 100% of the income tax that is not withheld or under withheld or not or under collected, not or underpaid and withheld, but not underpaid. The last one is 100% of the value added tax, goods and services, and sales tax on luxury goods that are not paid or underpaid. This is the example. So this PT ABC is corporate taxpayer engaged in contracting service as until April 30, 2009, the PT has not submitted the the annual corporate tax return in 2008. So the KPP has issued a warning letter on May 20, 2008. So the PT to submit the SPT letter as soon as possible, but the last time they can submit it is on June 3rd, 2009. But the PT ABC has only submitted the SPT on 5 June 2009 with these details. And after the inspection, it turns out that the net profit is 100 million. So the tax payable should be 12 million and 500. So the DJP published the SKP Part B on December 10, 2009, and the result is the amount of tax that still need to be paid by PT ABC is 18 million and 750. Next is SKPKBT, Corporate Ketetapan Pajak Kurang Bayar. So underpayment tax assessment letter is an additional tax assessment letter that determines the additional tax amount that has been determined. So there's a total tax that has been established, additional total tax, the area of the amount of administrative sections, an additional amount of tax that still need to be paid. About the result is 8 million that which we add the additional total tax for 4 millions and the area of the amount of administrative sections for 4 million. So 4 million plus 4 million equals 8 million. So the Director General of Tax may issue an additional underpaid tax assessment within a period of 5 years after the time the tax is due or at the end of the tax period, part of the tax year or the tax year. If a new data is found, which result in an increase of in the amount of tax payable after the audit is carried out in the context of the issues of additional underpayment tax assessment letter. So what is new data? So what is meant by new data is data or information regarding everything needed to be calculated of the amount of tax payable, which the taxpayer has not been notified result on time or well in the letter. So it's not completed on the attachment in the books that the company submitted at the time of inspection. So in addition, new data includes dates that are not previously disclosed. There are two not disclosed by the taxpayer in the tax return and its attachment, including financial record, or at the time of the audit for the original determination, the taxpayer does not disclose data and or provide other information correctly, completely, and in detail. So there is not possible for the tax authorities to properly apply the provision of the tax regulation in calculating the amount of tax payable. even though the taxpayer has notified the data to the tax return or disclose it to the time of the audit. But if he notifies or disclose it in such a way as to make it possible for the tax authorities to calculate the amount of tax owed correctly, so that the amount of the tax payable is determined to be less than what it should be. This include the meaning of new data, the data that has not previously revealed. So here the example of the new data that we talked before. So in the notification letter or financial report, it's written that there are an advertising fee for 10 million, but in reality, the fee is consists of 5 million on the administrative fees in the media, and the remaining is 5 million is a donation or a gift. If at the time of the original determination of the taxpayer did not disclose these details, so that the tax authorities did not make corrections to the expeditor in the form of donation or gift, so the tax payable could not be calculated correctly, then the data regarding the expeditor in the form or donation or gift is classified as a data that was not previously disclosed. And this is about the publications of the SKP KBT. So based on past Article 15 UU KUP, there are two first to talk about this. So the second first is the amount of tax underpayment payable in the additional underpaid tax assessment is added with administrative sections in the form of an increase of 100% of the total tax deficiency. And the third first, the increase as referred to paragraph 2 is not subject to if when the additional underpaid tax relief is issued based on written statement from the taxpayer on her or his own will, that provided the Director of General of Taxes has not started the inspection action in the framework of the issuance of the latter additional underpayment tax assessment. So another example. So the SPT article of for the period December 28 of PT FGH has been examined, and the SKPKB issued October 10, 2009 with this detail: the tax principal amount, the credit amount of tax, the total shortage of tax principal sections, administrative interest based on Article 13 first at the second verse, and this is like the amount of tax that they need to be paid is about 12 million rupiahs that we get from this, the total shortage of principal for 10 million, and the sections of administrative for 2 million. So 10 million versus 2 million is 12 million. So in May 2010, New data has been found in the form of the object of article 23 of income tax, which has not been deducted by PT FGH, and should have been reported in December 2008 with a total tax base of 20 million. So it should be the principal amount of tax on the period of December 2008 is 120 billion. So the DJP is SKPKBT in May 25th, 2010, which the result of the amount that they still need to be paid is 40 million rupiah, which we add from the additional tax and the administrative section. The third, I think this is the third one, is SKPLB, Awasan Ketetapan Pajak Lebih Bayar. Overpaid tax assessment letter is an assessment letter of a tax that determines the amount of tax overpayment because the amount of the tax credit is greater than the tax than what it should be. This the example. There is the tax payable for 10,000 and the total tax credit is 10 million. Sorry, the total tax credit is 10 million, and 16 million minus 10 million equals to the total excess of tax payment, which is 6 million. Regarding the tax, the SKPLB conditions, we can see on Article 17 of the KUP and 1 until 3 for the first. In the first, the Director General of Taxes, after conducting the audit, issues an assessment of overpaid tax if the amount of tax credit or the amount of the tax is greater than the amount of the tax payable. In the second verse, based on the request of the taxpayer, the Director General of Taxes, after examining the correct of the tax payment, issues an assessment of overpaid tax if there is a tax payment that should not be due, whose provision is unregulated or based on the regulations of the Minister of Finance. In the third verse, an overpaid tax assessment letter can be still issued again if based on the result of the examination or the new data turns out that the overpaid tax is greater than the determined tax overpayment. Here's the example of SKPLB. So the PT XYZ is a badan that conducts business activities of trading electronic goods. Submitting the SPT PPH badan in the year 2008 or tahun takwim on April 30, 2009 with this detail. There's net income, PPH payable, tax credit, underpaid taxes, and the shortfall based on PPH article number 29 that was paid on April 29, 2009. And if based on the result of the inspection, it turns out that the net income should be 900 million. So the income tax payable should be 252,500,000. So the DJP is the SKP LB, and the result is the tax overpayment amount for 30 million that we get from the tax credit amount for 282,500,000 minus the taxes payable for 252,500,000 that equals the tax overpayment amount. The last one is SKPN, surat keterangan pajak pihak. Is it true? But in English, we can say it's a zero tax assessment letter. So zero tax assessment letter is a tax assessment letter that determines the principal amount of tax is equal to the amount of tax credit or unpaid tax, or which means not tax credit, based on the Article 1, number 18 of the KUP, UU KUP. So for the publish of the SKPN, the Director of General Taxes, after conducting the audit of the zero tax assessment, if the amount of tax credit or the amount of tax paid is equal to the amount of tax payable or no tax credit or no tax payment. So for the income tax on value added tax and for PPHBM, the amount of tax paid is equal to the amount of the tax owed, or the tax is not payable, or there is no tax payment. The example PT-JKL is the WP Badan that conducts business activities on the garment industry to submit the SPT PPH of the SPT PPH Badan in 2008. On the April 30, 2009, starting loss with the following details. So this is the net loss, the PPH payable, the tax credit, and the taxes that less or more paid, which is nil or nothing. So if based on the result of examination, it turns out that the net loss should be 4 million and the income tax payable remains nil or nil, the DJP will issue the SKPN with this amount, with zero amount of tax principal, so tax credit, and the nil tax. So that's the end of our group presentation. We are sorry if there's some mistakes that we made. And thank you for listening until the end.